Hello and welcome to Find It. Tonight we have a lady who's going to tell her story. She helps a lot of people through being so brave to tell her own. And her name is Tara Alston. She has written her own book called Yet Still I Stand. And she has a lot of degrees, but I know for sure she specializes in social psychology and human resources management. And she's going to come on and tell you about it. And I think that take a listen, share this out so other people can listen to her story too, because it's going to be very helpful. So hang tight. We're going to show her intro and she will be right back with us. Hello, Tara.
Hi, Debbie.
I'm so happy to see you here. I will tell our audience that Tara and I are on a little bit of a different sound. Our sound is like overlapping, so we may interrupt each other once in a while, but hang tight. We'll figure this little system out. Welcome to the show, Tara. I'm so happy that you're here. And thank you to Gwen Thomas, who introduced us at her big old birthday party. And I got to meet you and learn about you and about your book. And I really, we have about 35 to 40 minutes, and I'm not going to mess around. I'm going straight in. I want you to tell us who you are, where you work right now, but then I want you to tell us about the trauma and the abuse that you have sustained and that you're currently and continuing to heal from.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Debbie. I'm excited to be on tonight. I've been looking forward to it. So, as you mentioned, I'm Tara Alston, and I am the author of the award-winning book, Yet Still I Stand. So I'm excited that that's out and published and is going along. And I'm also a wife and a mother. So I had 3 boys myself, and then I married my husband who has 3 girls. And so we have a whole bunch of kids to actually 4 of them are grown, but have a whole bunch of kids to keep us busy. And then I love some like my own that I didn't birth, of course, as well. So we have a lot going on. I also am the founder and owner of Yet Still I Stand LLC. And that's where I do a lot of my speaking engagements through. I do coaching, and I also do formal training, whether it's workshops or smaller trainings. So they range from big to small. I've done some globally and then some locally. So it's been a big range. There's been a ton of doors open up in the past about 1.5 years. So it's been a really exciting ride.
Oh, I'm so proud and so happy for you that you're able to take what you've gone through and turn it into something that's so helpful for others. And I did look through a lot of the things that you've been doing, and it's very impressive, Tara. And like you said, from the time that I've met you until now, all the speaking engagements and all the places that you've traveled, it's just really impressive and really cool, I think. Um, I want you to tell us what made you go and write a book, and tell us a little bit about the book.
Throughout the years, as people would learn a little bit about my story, they often would say, you have to write a book. This is more like a Lifetime movie type of thing. And I blew it off throughout the years just because as you're going through different things, you're not thinking that way at all. But as I continued on my healing journey and really was looking back at what all I have been healing from, I started to write the story just to get it down. But then also in hopes that even if it just helped one person by providing any type of encouragement or hope, letting them know that there is hope beyond the abuse or the trauma, that it was going to be worth, writing. So that's what my motivation was.
Well, I love that. And also, what about even if that one person it helps is you? Because I know I've talked to so many authors who have said it was a healing journey writing it. It was very cathartic, and that I'm sure that do you feel the same way?
I absolutely do. It took me a while to write, not because it was extremely long. It was kind of twofold as far as why it took me so long. One was because I had to keep putting it down for a while. When you are diving into those deep details, um, a lot of times you need a break. And so I would put
Mhm.
it down sometimes longer than what I should, and pick it back up and write. But also because it was a challenge making sure that I included enough detail so that people would understand the story, but not so much that the message was lost in the book. So that took a while to try to determine as well.
Yeah, it is a balance between getting the story out and what your message is. What is the message?
The message is that there is hope, that you can heal, that you're worthy of healing. You're worthy to be able to heal and grow and thrive. Because a lot of times when you go through different abuses and traumas, a lot of what you hear about yourself, you can start believing. So as you come out of this or are thinking about coming out of this, one of the first things that you have to face is the fact that you are not what you've been through and what they've told you. And trying to understand that and really take that in and process it and then heal and grow with it. So that is the biggest message.
Is is the reason you got into psychology partly because you knew you wanted to help other people, or was it more because you felt like you needed to learn about it?
I think when I started that degree, it was because I wanted to help other people. I've always had very strong empathy for others and what they're going through. And so that was originally why I had started into
Mhm.
that degree. But then, as you go through and you're learning different things, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that applies to me. Um, and it helps as well with your healing journey to understand different things about trauma and how it impacts you and then what you can do to help. So that
Well,
it was a twofold thing.
yeah, it definitely would have been. And the other part of this is I like when you said, you are more than what's happened to you. You
That's
know,
it.
that's very powerful. I really, really, that resonates. Um, so you had mentioned in your bio, that you had suffered abuse as a child and then again as an adult. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So how it started is my parents had gotten divorced when I was about 3, and there was a lot of abuse and things going on, by my biological father, not to me, but to my mother. And so she had determined that that needed to end. She had tried to allow him to have me, visitation and things like that, but he was not making great choices at the time. He was battling his own stuff. And so she had to then stop that just to keep me protected. Um, Not long after, it was probably within a couple of years after the divorce, she did remarry. It was somebody that she felt like was going to be a good choice and was comfortable with because he had been a friend of the family. It was a small town, so you think you know everything about everybody. And really, what it was is she had been through so much then that she had unhealed stuff going on in her life. And that often causes us to not be able to see things as clearly as you could
Mhm.
otherwise. And so little did she know what we would be facing, when she remarried. And not long after she remarried, then she got pregnant with my sister. And I think she was about 7 months along in her pregnancy, and her mother passed.
Oh,
And she and I had been very close to my grandmother. And, so of course we took that hard. And she was pregnant and all of the extra things that would have gone with the pregnancy and having the emotions of, carrying a child that isn't going to know your mother and all of the things. And my stepdad, who eventually adopted me, but I still refer to him as my stepdad to try to distinguish between the two dads, and also because he never meant more to me than that. Um, but he began to take advantage of the situation of my grandmother passing and sexually abused me. And how that started was, he was trying to make it seem like he was doing good things for my mom who was pregnant and grieving her mother, and you go ahead and go to bed, and if anything comes up, I'll make sure I take care of it. And I was also having a hard time. So he began coming in pretending that he was comforting me from being sad about my grandmother passing.
Mm.
And so that sexual abuse was something that began when I was 5 and was so frequent, there would be no way for me to even give you the number of times that it happened. So that was the majority of the abuse that I endured, I guess, at his hand. There was physical abuse as well, but that, as far as I can remember, was not something nearly as frequent as the sexual abuse.
Tara,
Uh,
that's a lot. I mean, and that's such a young, 5 years old.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, do you remember being a 5-year-old and what was your thought process as a kid? Like, is there one? I don't even know.
As a kid, the things that I really remember, and it's strange because often when you've gone through trauma like this, especially chronic trauma and trauma that starts, so young, your brain will try to block out certain things as a protection mechanism, but mine blocked out good things. So
Oh,
there's not a lot of good memories that I have as a child, and I know that there were good things that occurred, but it's not something that I remember as clearly. With my memories about that time frame and the sexual abuse, I remember it didn't seem right, and I remember that I didn't like it, um, and I had a really hard time sleeping because I was always afraid that he was going to come in.
oh,
So I remember battling that, you'd be so tired from playing or whatever, and then just having that fear and not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. Um, so I remember those feelings. And then I remember, responding as a kid, I pretended like I was asleep. Um, it's almost like, how kids play hide and seek and they just cover their eyes and don't think you can see them.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of that same type of thing where, I would just pretend I was asleep and hopefully it would stop soon and everything would be over. So those were the types of things that I was thinking about.
How long did this happen, Tara?
So I there was also emotional abuse, of course. Anytime you're dealing with sexual abuse and physical abuse, there's most likely going to be emotional abuse as well. And although that wasn't something that seemed, when you tell people about it, it doesn't seem as harmful. Um, the emotional abuse can actually carry on with you a lot longer in life than some of the physical things that can happen.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when the physical abuse stopped. I know that the emotional abuse and the sexual abuse ended as I left when I was 17. Um,
Wait a minute. You're telling me that this happened from 5 until you left your home at 17 years old. I just wanna make sure I'm clear.
yes.
Okay. Wow, Tara. And
Yeah.
did you ever tell anybody what was happening?
Um, there were only bits and pieces that I would tell, and I don't even remember what it was that I would tell. I just know that there were, as you know, I did get out of the situation and began talking about my truth.
Yeah.
There was a lot that the people closest to me did not know because I
Wow.
remember playing in my head, I how I would tell somebody or what I would say, but I guess those are things that I never actually did. It was more so just thinking about those things. Um, so, it was a situation to where I felt pretty alone. I mean, I had told a couple of friends,
Yeah,
but
as you got
still,
older, like your teenage years, you told friends?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But
So, but I still didn't get into any major detail. It was just, you know,
uh-huh.
big picture type of things. And he eventually ended up also exploiting me through child sexual abuse material. So I don't know what's out there at this point, but there were instances of that as well.
You mentioned that you have a sister.
Yes.
Did he abuse her also?
Sexually, no. Um, the I don't really want to put
Yeah,
words
that's
in her mouth for her story,
got
but I know that there was a lot of emotional abuse for everybody in the home, just because of the fact that if he wasn't happy, he was going to make sure nobody else was happy. So he had that type of personality. Unless we were out somewhere, then that was completely different. So everybody experienced some form of abuse, but she did not experience the sexual abuse.
it. Okay. And,
But she was his biological daughter, and I
right,
was not, so
that's right. And, I've heard people say, and even like Walter McKinley, who was on my show, who suffered a lot of abuse, physical abuse, as a kid, he knows hurt people hurt people. So, and you also, with all of your, schooling that you've had, you learn these things that, I'm not giving him a free pass because it's horrible, but you
right.
do know that
Yes,
he wasn't right. I mean, people who are mentally stable and healthy don't do things like that.
correct. Yes, he also had endured different things, and I definitely understand that, but like you said, I don't excuse it. I do
No,
understand it.
exactly.
Um, you know, for instance, in my situation, everybody handles trauma and healing differently, and some people don't handle it. They just don't. They perpetuate it instead. And so I think that that is what happened there.
Okay. So all of a sudden, then you leave before you're even 18. What do you go? Where do you go when you leave your home?
I got an apartment.
Oh, wow.
So I got an apartment, and I had been working part-time, and I changed that to full-time, and then I still was finishing my senior year of high school. Um, so I was working on all the things and was pretty busy.
Okay. And so, that's wow. I mean, before you graduated high school, you were living in your own apartment. Did
Yes.
your mom wonder why you left?
I did tell her as I was leaving,
Okay. And
and
so
not all the details again, just
right, because,
some
I
things.
wanna go back to this because I have read about children having abuse, sexual abuse, specifically sexual abuse, not telling and hiding it. And at that young of an age, it started happening to you so young. Like, how do you even articulate what's happening? How do you tell somebody? Then it goes along for such a long time. I mean, it's for someone like, that's never had sexual abuse, may not understand how you didn't say something. But
Right,
when you really learn about psychology and the way your mind works and protective instincts and all that, it's scary to say something and you just didn't. And that's
right.
common. And I've learned that.
And like I said little things here and there, but didn't give any type of detail,
Mhm.
and all the things. And so, part of it, there's lots of reasons why people don't tell when they're a young child or even not a young child. They could be an adult and don't say anything for quite some time. One tactic that abusers do use, especially with children, is that you're going to get in trouble if you tell because this was wrong.
Yeah, and, so I'm sure you got that too. That's part of the emotional abuse and control that he knew if he
Right.
was found out, it'd be bad news for him. My daughter was asking a question. She handed me a note like in class, like, she didn't fold it up or anything, but it's so funny. She wants to know, she finds it she said, "How did it make you feel being the one that was sexually abused and having a sister who wasn't, and did that affect your relationship with your sister?"
It did. While we were growing up, I didn't really think about I was being abused and she wasn't. I was just happy that I didn't think that there was any type of sexual abuse going on. So that wasn't something that put us at odds. But I think what put us at odds, there were 6 years in between us, or
Okay.
there is there is 6 years in between
Well,
us. That hasn't changed. And so I didn't have an outlet for the things that were pent up inside of me, um,
Mm,
and the things that I was enduring. So
mm.
I do think, siblings fight, and, they may hit one another sometimes, although that's not right, and all those things. But I feel like I may have been harder on her than I would have ever wanted to have been, out of pure frustration from the things that I was going through. Because that's not my personality. I obviously love her and care about her. But I
Mhm.
think that because of what I was going through, I wasn't as loving and as caring and all of that as I should have been and would have been without what I was going through as a kid. And then, as we have gotten older and she then found out what was going on, what I had endured, and we were able to talk about all of those things, that did a ton of healing. And I apologize for being mean when I was little, and
Aw.
and all of that. So, I think that helped a ton. So we were close now. And, before I wrote my book, because I knew that there were things that she and, my mom didn't know. And there were lots of things that they didn't know. And, even after all of this time. And so I had them read the book and, go over different stuff, and got their blessing, just in the fact that, I wanted to make sure everybody was going to be okay with me telling my truth. And of course it was, just because they are my, some of my biggest supporters, and, we are close, and we've all been through a lot together. And so,
Yeah.
so I did get the blessing and was able to get that released.
Well, thank goodness you got their blessing, but, if you really think about their side, it would be difficult
Mm,
because, your mother was married to this man, and that's your sister's biological father, so I'm
right,
sure that probably cut her heart out thinking that her father would have done something like that to you, so
right,
I'm glad that you guys have a good relationship after you telling your truth, um, because I could see it not going that well, you know?
right, right. Yeah, so that's definitely been a blessing.
And
And that's not where my trauma ended. Like so many people who have gone through different childhood abuses, I basically went from abuse to abuse. So at 17, I met a man who became my first husband. He was 5 years older than me, and I endured a lot of similar, but I guess you can't really rate them, but it felt like more harsh type of abuses, if
mm,
you can get any harsher than sexual abuse of a child. So I'm not comparing those. It's just the
no.
extent of the different things that I was going through. So I went through emotional abuse in that marriage, in that relationship, and the physical abuse was 1,000 times more than the physical abuse that I endured as a child. So um, I've been beaten pretty much in every way. His favorite thing to do was to strangle you, which is one of the leading indicators of death, of murder, in the future. And so that was one of his favorite things, and to smother, where he would cover my mouth and my nose, to try to keep me from being able to breathe, and um, dragging me through the house by my hair, and just different things. And it didn't there's never ever, and this is definitely part of my message, there's never a good reason for anybody to do anything to you, physically. So when I state this next statement, it's not because I think that there's ever a reason, but even in somebody's mind like his, there would have not been any reason for him to do so. I could just be sitting there,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he would start in on me. He said that it gave him an adrenaline rush. He just enjoyed how it made him feel to do it. And so that was a scary relationship. I also experienced sexual assault in that relationship. I was raped, at gunpoint, and raped while being strangled, and I went through all of that frequently as well. And then, he would often threaten my life and went through financial abuse. So that's something that abusers often try to use to keep you stuck. And so, if they can control all the finances and then also mess up your credit and do all of those types of things, it's hard to get out. Um,
Mm.
it's very difficult to be able to find the finances to leave because that's not just something that's easy and free to do, let alone, then try to build your life after that. And I finally left. I had left multiple times, but he would find us, and threaten, additional harm or threaten to hurt the people that were helping. And so then you feel like some sort of guilt, just like, I can't keep asking people to help me because if something happens, like I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Um, so I kept going back, but I had two boys with him, and they were 1 and 2 at the time, that I'm getting ready to discuss. And he had physically abused them one day. And that's where I drew the line. I know now that the line should have been drawn with me. So that's something that through my healing process I understand now, but it definitely was drawn at my children. And so the day that he abused them, he was working a night job. So when I got back home and saw that they had been abused, I waited until he left that night to go to work and took pictures of the marks on their body. And then I had to wait. I got some stuff together and had to wait until the next day, to be able to do anything, when he was asleep because we only had one car at the time. And so when he went to sleep, I left with a diaper bag and my kids and went and filed, charges. I went to Children's Services to have charges filed, soon after filed for divorce. And it was a scary situation because a lot of people die as they're
Knowing
leaving.
that. Yeah.
But at that point, it was worth it to me. If that's what it took to get my kids safe, that's what was going to happen. So I did leave and I was able to get my kids to safety. That is a story all in and of itself because our justice system is not just. And so we experienced a lot of things going through the court system and not being protected like we should have been. My lawyer telling me if I wasn't nicer to him by allowing him to, have the things that he was asking for, that she wasn't going to be my attorney anymore, like all kinds of ridiculous things. And he would still show up at my house and threaten to hurt us. He'd show up at my job. So, we were free, but we weren't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that he, ended up assaulting another woman. And then not long after that, he ended up murdering the next one. And so it was that once I found that out, it was, pretty excruciating for me. I grieved for a woman that I never knew,
Oh my God.
because she lived
Oh my God.
the worst nightmare that I had had.
Oh my God. That's
And so that was hard.
Was he married to her or just dating her?
He married her, and it wasn't long after they got married that he murdered her. And I found out because he sent a letter to me, hand delivered by his mom, um, stating that he was coming back to get us. And I knew what that meant. There were a lot of letters throughout these years that I've received that there's been hidden messages, where I know what he's saying, but he used to be a police officer. So one of the things that he told me was that he could kill me and get away with it because he knew what to cover up. And so in his letters, there were a lot of things that he would state where he knew I would know what he was saying, but that he wouldn't get in trouble for. Um,
God.
and so, I found out about the murder because he had sent this letter via his mom. And when I received it, it had a detention center stamp on it. And I was like, I don't think they do that for employee letters. So I contacted the detention center, who immediately put me through to the prosecutor's office. They wanted to know every detail of the abuse that I had experienced at his hands. Um, and all they would tell me at that time is that he was in there for murder and that all the things that I described is how he killed her.
Oh my God, Tara.
And so I was listed as a similar transaction witness for the case, but received a death threat right after. And so they were actually only going to use me if they felt like they absolutely had to in order to get a conviction. And they were able to get that conviction without my testimony, although I would have been willing to testify. And
Who sent the death threat?
we don't know. I have no idea because he was in jail, and whoever did it used like a voice distorter box so
Oh,
that their voice wasn't recognizable. So I have no idea who it was. Um, and throughout the years, I've lived in terror of because he had a life sentence with the eligibility of parole after 14 years. And so I lived really, just in fear of the end of that 14 years, not knowing, because then I knew he would come up for parole and, that whole process. And they did keep him a little bit longer than 14 years, but I think it's been about a year and a half. I'm losing track. It's been within the
wait,
last 2 years that he was released. I think it was a year and a half ago.
how do you get released after abusing people repetitively and then killing someone? That doesn't make sense to me at all. Where
No,
is he? How do you, I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, is that scary for you?
I yeah, I mean, I don't live in fear. I had to choose once I knew they were releasing him if I was going to live in that type of terror, or if I was going to take back that power and just use wisdom. And so that was my choice. I have taken back that power and I use wisdom. I do fear. I can't talk. I do fear for others.
Yeah.
Um, as well, just because anybody, he used to state that he would be driving down the street, and if he'd see people like walking on the sidewalk, his hands would start sweating because he had such an urge to kill them.
Just like to run them over?
Well, he never
Or
specified how,
okay.
but
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. That is did he get any type of, I wonder if you even know this, but in prison, did he get rehabilitation or any type of counseling? Or I mean, that is one thing that if our system is gonna put murderers back out on the street, we definitely need a system that's going to try to at least help rehab these people.
Uh, yes, I agree. But I also don't necessarily, and this is my personal opinion, just mainly after dealing with him, but I don't know that is that you can rehab from the type of person that he is. So,
Well, that's true. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, somebody that the hands sweat and you want to like pull over and kill the people you don't even know that's on the side of the road. That's pretty scary. That's pretty. Do you
yeah,
know where he is right now? Like what state?
yes, I
Okay.
do. He's in Georgia currently,
Okay.
um, and just to give a better understanding, obviously he has harmed and killed women, but even when my boys were babies, he would just look at me and be like, "What do you think would happen if I'd punched them as hard as I could?"
Tara,
So,
was there anything before you married him? And let's keep the perspective here. You were an
mhm,
sexually abused child, physical, emotional abused child. You get out, you go into another abuser's hands. Were there any, now looking back, or even at the time, were there any signs prior to you marrying him that you saw?
yes, absolutely. Um, it started out him just talking really mean to me, and that wasn't something that was abnormal. And when you grow up in that type of situation, one of the things that I always did if somebody was upset with me is try to figure out what do I need to change or do better, so that they're I can make them happy and they're not upset. I always felt like there was something wrong with me.
Mm,
And so that is what kept me in that originally. I did get pregnant very early on in that relationship
okay.
with my oldest son. And that's when the physical abuse began. And he was mad because I did not want to marry him right away. Um, we had only known each other a couple of months, and I was a little nervous about him anyway. And so that wasn't something I was comfortable doing yet. I was 17
Mm.
and
And
pregnant
confused and
and
didn't know who you were at that point.
no, and especially because, I grew up with all of the other abuses, I never got to explore anything about myself, so I didn't
Yeah.
know anything really about myself. Um, and so when I tried to have that discussion with him, he picked me up and threw me against the wall. And that was the first experience of physical abuse, and it went on from there. And so, even after I had my oldest son, he was 3 weeks old, so I was still healing, and that was the first time I had been raped at gunpoint. And so that was before we were married. But what ended up happening is he told me he was gonna kill me and take my baby if I didn't marry him. And so I thought, well, again, my mind wasn't thinking clearly. It wasn't a healthy mind. And so I was like, well, I better try this because, maybe that'll just make him happy and he'll stop being upset and then we won't have to worry. But of course, that's not how that works.
No.
So,
But I can see where there's a trend here with young women who maybe not have the best, not necessarily upbringing. I don't want to blame anybody, but the things that have happened to you and these things happen to other people,
right,
and you get into another scenario that almost feels like you're normal, but it's
right.
not. But I mean, I've had some people put some comments up, like Bob Donnell, who is an amazing question asker. I'll say that. He said, "What was the greatest discovery about yourself through that experience?" I
Through
mean,
the through that experience, I guess like initially coming out of it, I think that my greatest discovery about myself is that I could love two little people so much that I'm willing to lay my life down if I need to. So that's when I first discovered, you
your
know,
strength.
yeah, my why and my strength. And so that was my greatest discovery then. Since then, my greatest discovery about myself is really just that it's just how much I care about people. And I just really, really want to walk with people through their hard times and see them get to the other side. I want to be their biggest cheerleader. I want to be somebody that if they need somebody to talk to, I'm here. There are so many people going through such
Mm,
horrendous things. Um, and abusers like to isolate you. They don't want you to have a support system. They don't want you to have your tribe. They don't want you to have anybody encouraging you. And so they isolate you from people who could be there for you. So when you come out of that, you don't have any like real support systems. Of course, there are people who've cared about you that are there and waiting, but you don't know what a support system is like. And then, everybody has their lives and they're doing different things and everybody's busy. And so it's really difficult to find people who can be there for you when you need them the most.
mm.
And so that is the most important to me.
Yeah. Tori asks, what would you tell girls out there right now who are experiencing this type of abuse and feel like there's no way out?
I would go back to what we talked about in the beginning and stating that you are not what they have done to you and you are not what they have told you. Um, so often you are in those situations and you feel like you deserve something. You deserved whatever treatment you got because that's all you hear. The whole time they're treating you that way is that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you're too much, you're not enough. Like there's various things that they tell you. And so just understand until you can feel it yourself that there are those of us who know that you are valuable and you are worth it. And there are people here that are, really want to be there for you and really want to help you find resources, and want to make sure that not only do you get out, but that you heal and that you have the opportunity to experience the life that you deserve.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautifully said and such from the heart. I feel it. I feel it. Tara, you at the beginning of the show you talked about, if you could help one person through sharing your story, that they would be worth it. Have you felt like you've been validated from a person that you've helped thus far?
I have had a lot of people come and share their stories with me, and have had the blessed opportunity to be able to be a part of their lives. So, yes, I would say that I have been. And in those cases, it's not about you. It's
Mhm.
just you find so much joy in being able to see people um, get what they deserve and really like heal and figure out who they are, like we were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
um, find their strengths because we
yeah.
all have them. We all have strengths, even though when you walk out of a situation like that, you don't feel like you have any strengths. You've been beaten down, probably not only physically, but emotionally as well. And you
And like
begin
you
to believe
said,
those
that's
things.
even worse. I mean,
Right,
you can't compare the 2, but you're saying a lot of the emotional abuse you take through your life sometimes, and if you stuff it down, it's always there. Bruises
right,
heal. The emotional abuse doesn't unless you really heal. And
right.
so that brings me, and I can't believe that we've been on here for 45 minutes. Like your story is incredible. And I love the way you tell it, because I know you're just telling it to help people. And there's a message here through all of that. And that's that you're worthy and you're better than what you've been beaten down. But what I want to ask you is the shows Find It, because we're finding something in ourselves and in your life and everything that you've gone through. What have you found that you can share to inspire us to find it too?
I found my healing. Um,
Mm,
and like we said, that is something, it's a lifelong journey. It's not a quick destination. So it's a lifelong journey. And it is work, but it's absolutely worth it. But in finding my healing, I've also been able to find my passions and find my purpose. And that is when you
mm,
start thriving. That's when you feel like you have a reason to get up every day, regardless of the things that you've gone through, regardless of the things that you might still carry that you're working through. Having that passion and that purpose, and it may not be like, your be all end all big purpose that people are looking for up in the sky, when they're looking for letters up there and they go through this big thing. Every
mhm.
day we have a reason to be here. Every day when we wake up and we have that breath in our lungs, we can look at the different opportunities that we have that day to be able to make a difference. And so that's how I try to live my life.
That's beautiful. Finding healing. And Tara, when after all of this, and after you left your husband and then you find out he kills him, at what point in your life did the healing begin and how did you do that?
The healing began for me not long after I left, because I wanted to make sure that I could be the best mom that I could be. And so that was my driving factor to make sure that I, read as much as possible, you found as many tools as possible in order to be able to heal, found a good support system, people in my life. And it may have been different people throughout different stages of
Mm,
my life, but just people who were healthy for me and figured out how to set boundaries and things of that sort. So, that all began not long after I left, just because I wanted to make sure that I could be the best mom that I could be.
So those two little boys really, that's incredible. I'm so grateful for you sharing your story, but there's a lot more to it. And if you see the ticker along the bottom, www.yetstillistand.com is her website. It has all her social media handles and where you can buy her book. It has the link to Amazon where you can buy her book and help support her while she supports so many other people by maybe buying yourself a copy. And, we're pretty close to each other. Are you in Columbus?
Yes,
So we could do our own book signing. Get all of the people who watch this podcast, bring their book and have you sign it and meet you in person. I would love to see you again in realsies. And
I
then
would love
Kelly
to.
Prater says you are an incredibly strong mama woman, Tara. And Gwen
Thank you.
Thomas, who introduced us, is watching. I'm so incredibly proud of you, Tara, and admire the strength you have to not only heal, but to put yourself out there and strive to help others.
Thanks, Gwen.
And let's see what Robert says. And Jennifer Williams says, "You're amazing, Tara. Thanks, Debbie, for bringing her to us." You're welcome, Jennifer. And thanks for always watching. You're a good friend. Robert, did Robert say something, Lynn? Believe in yourself? No? Okay. Is there anything that you would like to end the podcast with that I haven't asked you, or you haven't said that you would like to end, or have you said it all?
I think I've pretty much said it all, but I would like to reiterate for those who are going through hardships or challenges, it doesn't have to be, the same types of abuse that I've gone through. It can just be difficult things. We all face difficult things in life. Don't give up. There are better days ahead. It is not always going to be like this. And there are a lot of us who care about you and want to see you make it and want to see you thrive. So make sure that you hang in there as you're going through these hard times. I know it's not easy, but we're here for you, and you can definitely do it.
Oh, if someone wants to reach out to you, they can do that through your website to
Yes.
get some assistance.
Yes.
Very good, Tara. Thank you again. You're
Thank
a
you.
quality, wonderful woman. And yeah, you're a badass, strong woman. Let's just say it like it is, people, right? That's what you are. You're a strong woman that can give other people hope that might be in similar situations. So with that, we have had another great one. Thanks again to all of you who are listening or watching, and all of you on replay. Check it out. Talk soon. See you next week. Same time. New guest, Justin Benton, who has his own company with CBD oil and a lot of other things in this company. And he will be on to explain the uses of it and how it's really good stuff, I guess. So we're going to find out. I got a lot of questions for him. So tune in next week, same time, and we'll see you later. That floats around me, keeping me